I never thought I would spend my Friday morning staring at a stack of certified letters addressed to my property management company, each one more unhinged than the last. But here, I was doing exactly that while my coffee went cold on the desk. My name is Zachary Ventura, and I had been running a small property management company in Phoenix, Arizona for the past 7 years. We handled about 30 residential properties across the city, mostly single-family homes whose owners had moved out of state but wanted to keep their investments. It was steady work, not glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept me busy. What I did not expect was to stumble into a nightmare involving an HOA president who had apparently made it her personal mission to destroy my business. The discovery started innocently enough. I was meeting with one of my clients, Robert Chen, who owned a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the Saguaro Ridge community on the east side of Phoenix. He had called me that morning sounding stressed, which was unusual because Robert was typically the most laid-back landlord I worked with. When I arrived at his property for our meeting, he was already there, pacing in the driveway with his phone pressed to his ear. "Zachary, thank God," he said when he saw me, ending his call abruptly. "We need to talk about the HOA situation." I frowned, pulling my laptop bag from the passenger seat. "What HOA situation? I have not heard anything from them." Robert's expression told me everything I needed to know before he even opened his mouth. "That is the problem. They have been sending notices for months apparently, but not to you. They have been sending them to some random address, and now they are threatening to fine me $15,000 for alleged violations." My stomach dropped. $15,000 was not pocket change, and if the HOA had legitimate complaints that we had not addressed, that could be a serious problem. But more concerning was the fact that I had never received a single notification. As the property manager, I was supposed to be the primary contact for all HOA communications. "Show me everything," I said, following Robert into the house. He had spread out documents across the kitchen counter, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There were at least 20 letters, all from the Saguaro Ridge HOA, dating back 6 months. They complained about everything imaginable. The paint color being half a shade too dark, a crack in the driveway that was allegedly unsightly, landscaping that did not meet community standards, and even a claim that the garage door had been left open overnight on multiple occasions. "I just got these yesterday," Robert explained, his voice tight with frustration. "They sent them all at once to my billing address in Seattle, but look at the dates. These go back to August and it is February now. Every single letter says a copy was sent to the property management company at this address." He pointed to a line on one of the letters. I leaned in to read it, and my confusion deepened. The address listed was 4287 West Cactus Road, Suite 15, Phoenix, as 85,029. That was not my office address. My company, Ventura Property Management, had been located at 1523 North Central Avenue, Suite 8, for the past 5 years. "This is not my address," I said slowly. "I have never worked out of West Cactus Road." Robert ran his hand through his hair. "That is what I thought. So either they have the wrong information or something else is going on." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of every document. "Let me do some digging. In the meantime, what are the actual conditions of the property? Are any of these complaints legitimate?" We spent the next hour walking through the house and around the exterior. The paint color was exactly what the HOA had approved 3 years ago when the previous owner had it done. The crack in the driveway was barely visible, maybe 2 inches long and superficial. The landscaping was immaculate because I had a service come every 2 weeks, and the garage door claim was completely fabricated. The property had tenants, a nice family with 2 kids, and they were meticulous about keeping everything secure. "None of this makes sense," I muttered, standing in the front yard and looking at the house. It was one of the best maintained properties in the entire neighborhood. "Something is definitely wrong here." Robert nodded grimly. "I need you to figure this out, Zachary. I cannot afford a $15,000 fine for violations that do not exist." I promised him I would get to the bottom of it and headed back to my office with copies of all the documents. The moment I walked in, I called my assistant, Marcus, into my office. "I need you to pull up every single communication we have had with any HOA in the past year," I said, spreading the letters across my desk. "Specifically, Saguaro Ridge HOA. I want emails, letters, phone calls, everything." Marcus, who had been with me for 3 years and was incredibly organized, nodded and disappeared to his desk. While he worked on that, I decided to call the HOA directly. The contact information was listed on the letterhead: Saguaro Ridge Homeowners Association, with a phone number and an email for the president, a woman named Karen Whitmore. Of course her name was Karen. I almost laughed at the cliché, but the situation was too serious for humor. I dialed the number and waited through 4 rings before a woman answered. "Saguaro Ridge HOA, this is Karen speaking." "Hi Karen, my name is Zachary Ventura. I am the property manager for the home at 2847 Desert Willow Drive. I understand there have been some communications about violations, and I wanted to discuss them with you." There was a pause on the other end, long enough that I thought the call might have dropped. Then Karen's voice came back, cold and sharp. "Mr. Ventura, we have been trying to reach your company for 6 months. Your repeated failure to respond to our notices is completely unacceptable and unprofessional." I kept my voice calm and professional. "I understand your frustration, but I need to clarify something. I have not received a single notice from your association, not one email, letter, or phone call until today when my client contacted me." "That is impossible," Karen snapped. "We have sent multiple certified letters to your business address. We have the tracking information to prove it." "What address did you send them to?" I asked, already knowing the answer. 4287 West Cactus Road, Suite 15, she said smugly. "The address listed in our records for Ventura Property Management." "That is not my address," I said slowly. "My office is at 1523 North Central Avenue, Suite 8. It has been for 5 years. How did you get that West Cactus Road address?" Another pause. "It is in our system. It must have been provided at some point." "By whom?" "I certainly did not provide it. Can you tell me when that address was added to your system?" Karen's tone became defensive. "I do not have access to that information right now. Regardless, the violations remain, and if they are not corrected within 14 days, the fines will be assessed." I felt my patience starting to fray. "Karen, I need you to listen to me carefully. The property at 2847 Desert Willow Drive is in excellent condition. I was just there this morning, and none of the violations you listed are legitimate. The paint is the correct color that was approved years ago. There is no significant crack in the driveway. The landscaping exceeds your standards. And the garage door is never left open. I have photographic evidence of all violations," she said coldly. "Perhaps you should inspect your properties more carefully, Mr. Ventura." "Then I would like to see that evidence. Can you email it to me at my correct email address?" I gave her my business email, the same one I had been using for years. "I will send it when I have time," Karen said dismissively. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have actual work to do with property managers who take their responsibilities seriously." She hung up before I could respond. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone, feeling a mixture of anger and confusion. Something was very wrong with this entire situation, and Karen's attitude only made it worse. She was not interested in resolving anything. She seemed almost pleased that there was a problem. Marcus appeared in my doorway holding a folder. I went through everything. We have never received a single communication from Saguaro Ridge HOA. Not one email, not one letter, nothing. I even checked our spam folders and our physical mail logs. It is like they do not exist in our system. That is because they have been sending everything to a fake address, I said, explaining what I had just learned. Marcus's eyes widened. That is insane. How would they even get a wrong address? That is what I intend to find out. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing research. First, I checked the Arizona Corporation Commission website to see what address was listed for my LLC. It was correct, 1523 North Central Avenue. I checked my business license, my tax documents, my insurance policies. Everything had the right address. There was no legitimate reason anyone would have my business located at West Cactus Road. Then, I decided to investigate that address itself. I plugged 4287 West Cactus Road into Google Maps and found it was a small commercial strip mall on the west side of Phoenix, about 20 minutes from my actual office. I called the main number for the property management company that ran the strip mall and asked about Suite 15. Suite 15 is currently vacant, the woman who answered told me. It has been vacant for about 8 months. Before that, it was a tax preparation service. Has anyone been receiving mail there? For a company called Ventura Property Management. Let me check with our maintenance staff. Can you hold? I held for almost 5 minutes before she came back. Our maintenance supervisor says they have been collecting mail for that company name. Yes, he has it in a box in the office. We were not sure what to do with it since the suite is empty. My heart was pounding now. I am Zachary Ventura, the owner of Ventura Property Management. That mail is mine, but I have never had an office at your location. Someone has been using that address fraudulently. Can I come pick up that mail? Of course. We are here until 6. I grabbed my keys and told Marcus I would be back. The drive to West Cactus Road felt surreal. Someone had deliberately set up a fake address for my company and had been intercepting mail intended for me. But why? What was the end game? The strip mall was tired-looking, with a nail salon, a smoke shop, and several empty units. The property management office was in the corner, and when I walked in, a middle-aged woman greeted me from behind a desk. "Mr. Ventura, I have your mail right here." She hefted a large cardboard box onto the counter. "This has been accumulating for months. We kept meaning to do something about it, but honestly, we were not sure what the protocol was." I opened the box right there and felt my stomach turn. There were dozens of letters, all addressed to Ventura Property Management at this fake address. Most were from the Saguaro Ridge HOA, but as I dug deeper, I found letters from other HOAs too. Oak Creek Village HOA, Desert Springs Community Association, Sunset Hills HOA. These were all communities where I managed properties. "This is unbelievable," I muttered, pulling out letter after letter. Every single one was from an HOA, and every single one was a notice of violation, a fine, or a threat of legal action. "Is everything okay?" The woman asked, looking concerned. "No," I said honestly. "Someone has been deliberately routing my business mail to this address to prevent me from receiving it. I need to know if anyone has come here asking about this suite or trying to pick up this mail." She shook her head. "Not that I am aware of, but let me ask our maintenance supervisor. He is here more than I am." She made a call, and a few minutes later, a man in his 60s wearing a maintenance uniform walked in. "You asking about Suite 15? "Yes. I am Zachary Ventura." My company name has been used fraudulently at this address. Has anyone come here asking about mail or the suite itself? He scratched his chin, thinking. There was a woman, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. She came in asking if we had any mail for Ventura Property Management. I told her we did, and she said she was from an HOA and needed to verify the address because they were having trouble reaching the company. I did not think anything of it at the time. What did she look like? Middle-aged, blonde hair, kind of pushy. She had this attitude like she owned the place. I remember because she was rude to Maria here when Maria told her we could not just hand over someone else's mail. My mind was racing. Did she give you a name? Not that I remember. She just left after Maria told her off. I thanked them both, loaded the box into my car, and drove back to my office. Once there, I spent the next 3 hours going through every single letter with Marcus. The pattern was unmistakable. Starting about 7 months ago, multiple HOAs had begun sending correspondence about my managed properties to this fake address. The violations were all petty, the kind of things that could technically be in the CC and Articus, but were rarely enforced. Grass a 1/4 inch too long, a trash can left out 30 minutes past collection time, a car parked in a driveway instead of a garage. But here was the really disturbing part. Many of the violations were dated and time stamped for days when I had photographic evidence that the properties were in perfect condition. I kept detailed records, including weekly photos of every property I managed. When I cross-referenced the HOA complaints with my photos, they did not match up. The HOAs were claiming violations that provably did not exist. This is not incompetence, Marcus said, staring at the documents spread across the conference table. This is coordinated. He was right. This was a deliberate campaign to create problems for my business. But why? And who was behind it? I decided to start with the most aggressive source, Karen Whitmore from Saguaro Ridge HOA. I spent that evening researching her online. Karen was 52 years old, had been the HOA president for 3 years, and was apparently very active on Nextdoor and Facebook, constantly posting about community standards and property values. Her social media presence painted a picture of someone who took her HOA role very, very seriously. But I found something else too. About a year ago, there had been a dispute in the Saguaro Ridge community involving a property management company called Premier Homes Management. According to posts on Nextdoor, Karen had accused Premier of various violations and had gotten them banned from operating within the community. The posts were full of Karen's complaints about property managers in general, how they were ruining neighborhoods and bringing down property values. I called Robert Chen. Did the previous owner of your property use a property management company? Yes, actually. It was called Premier something, Premier Homes. They managed it before I bought it and hired you. The pieces were starting to come together. Karen Whitmore had a vendetta against property management companies, and for some reason, she had decided to target mine. The next morning, I contacted an attorney. His name was David Kellerman, and he specialized in real estate and HOA law. I had worked with him before on a different matter, and I trusted his judgment. I explained the entire situation, showed him all the documents, and asked for his advice. David leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. Zachary, what you are describing is harassment, fraud, and possibly criminal misconduct. If someone deliberately set up a fake address to intercept your business mail, that is mail fraud. If the HOAs are making false claims about violations, that is fraud. And if Karen Whitmore is coordinating this, she could be facing serious legal consequences. What should I do? First, we need to document everything meticulously. Second, We need to send cease and desist letters to all the HOAs involved, informing them of the fraud and demanding they withdraw all fines and violations. Third, we need to file a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate and potentially with law enforcement if we can prove criminal activity. What about my client? Robert is facing a $15,000 fine. We will handle that. I will draft a letter today explaining the situation and providing evidence that the violations are false. If they proceed with the fine, we will sue for damages and legal fees. I left David's office feeling slightly better. At least I had a plan. But I still needed more evidence to prove that Karen Whitmore was behind the fake address scheme. That afternoon, I decided to do something risky. I drove to the Saguaro Ridge HOA office, which was located in a small building near the entrance to the community. I did not have an appointment, but I figured showing up in person might shake something loose. The office was small and decorated with generic desert landscape prints. A young woman sat at the reception desk, typing on a computer. "Hi, I am here to see Karen Whitmore," I said, giving her my most professional smile. "You have an appointment?" "No, but I am Zachary Ventura, the property manager for 2847 Desert Willow Drive. I spoke with her yesterday, and I need to discuss some urgent matters." The receptionist looked uncertain but picked up her phone. "Karen, there is a Zachary Ventura here to see you." She paused, listening. "Okay, I will tell him." She hung up and gave me an apologetic look. She says she is too busy to meet without an appointment. "You can schedule one for next week if you like." I had expected that response. "That is fine. Can I ask you something while I am here? I am trying to update my records and I want to make sure you have the correct address for my company. What do you show in your system?" The receptionist looked hesitant. "I am not really supposed to give out that information." "It is my own company's address," I said reasonably. "I just want to make sure there was not a clerical error that has been causing communication problems." She glanced toward the closed door of what I assumed was Karen's office, then back at me. "I guess that is okay. Let me look." She typed on her computer. "It shows 4287 West Cactus Road, Suite 15. When was that address added to your system?" She clicked a few more times. "It looks like it was updated last August by Karen." My pulse quickened. "Do you know why she updated it?" "No, sorry. I just started working here in January." "Is there a record of what the address was before?" She bit her lip, clearly uncomfortable. "I do not think I should be telling you all this. Maybe you should talk to Karen directly." "You are right. Thank you for your help." I left the office with confirmation that Karen herself had changed my company's address in the HOA system. That was not conclusive proof of a conspiracy, but it was certainly damning. Why would an HOA president change a property manager's contact information without verifying it or notifying anyone? Back at my office, I called David Kellerman and updated him. "We need to get a subpoena for their records," he said. "If Karen changed your address without authorization, and if she did it for other property management companies too, that establishes a pattern of intentional misconduct." "How long will that take?" "A few weeks, at least." "In the meantime, I am going to send those cease and desist letters. We need to stop the bleeding before more fines pile up." Over the next week, things escalated quickly. David sent detailed letters to Saguaro Ridge HOA and the 3 other HOAs that had sent mail to the fake address. He included evidence of the mail fraud, photographic proof that the alleged violations did not exist, and a demand that all fines be withdrawn immediately. The responses were mixed. 2 of the HOAs, Oak Creek Village and Sunset Hills, immediately apologized and withdrew their fines. They claimed they had no knowledge of any address fraud and had simply been using the information in their systems. They updated my correct address, and that was that. Desert Springs Community Association responded with hostility, saying they stood by their violations and would proceed with fines. David filed a lawsuit against them on behalf of my client who owned property there. Saguaro Ridge HOA, predictably, doubled down. Karen Whitmore sent a letter through the HOA's attorney, refusing to withdraw the $15,000 fine and accusing me of trying to intimidate the board with frivolous legal threats. She is not backing down, I told David during a phone call. What is our next move? We file a lawsuit, and we go on the offensive. I am also recommending that you file a police report about the mail fraud. This has crossed the line from a civil dispute into criminal territory. The following Monday, I went to the Phoenix Police Department and filed a report. The officer who took my statement was a detective named Lisa Rodriguez, and she listened carefully as I explained everything. I brought all the documentation, the letters sent to the fake address, the proof that Karen had changed my address in the HOA system, the evidence that violations were fabricated. This is complex, Detective Rodriguez said, flipping through the documents. Mail fraud is typically a federal crime, so we might need to involve the FBI or the Postal Inspector's office. But the fraud and harassment components fall under state law. Let me consult with my supervisor and see how we should proceed. How long will that take? Give me a few days. In the meantime, document everything. If this woman contacts you or does anything else suspicious, I want to know about it immediately. I left the police station feeling like I was finally making progress, but also exhausted. This entire situation had consumed my life for the past 2 weeks. I was barely sleeping, and I was constantly worried about what other problems might surface. The answer came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, I received a call from another client, Susan Harper, who owned a property in the Desert Springs community. Zachary, I just got a letter from the HOA saying they are terminating your authorization to manage my property. They claim you have been unresponsive to violations and that I need to hire a new property manager within 30 days or face daily fines. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Susan, I need to explain what is happening. I spent the next hour on the phone with her, going through the entire situation. To her credit, Susan was supportive. This is outrageous. What can I do to help? Just hang tight. My attorney is already suing their HOA. This is going to get worse before it gets better. That same afternoon, I got 3 more calls from clients with properties in different communities, all reporting similar letters. It was clear that someone was spreading the word to multiple HOAs, encouraging them to target my company. I called David immediately. They are trying to destroy my business. If enough HOAs ban me from operating, I will lose most of my clients. This is tortious interference, David said. We can sue for that too. But Zachary, we need to be strategic. We need to find out who is coordinating this and stop it at the source. I think I know who it is, Karen Whitmore. Yes, but I need proof that she is communicating with other HOAs. David was quiet for a moment. There might be a way to get that. HOAs are usually governed by state regulations that require them to keep records of board communications and decisions. If we can subpoena records from multiple HOAs and find evidence that Karen was contacting them, we will have our proof. Do it. Over the next 3 weeks, David filed motions for discovery in the various lawsuits we had initiated. The legal fees were mounting, but I did not care. My business and my reputation were on the line. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The young receptionist from the Saguaro Ridge HOA office, whose name I learned was Emily, called me one evening. "Mr. Ventura, this is Emily from the Saguaro Ridge HOA. I am not supposed to be calling you, but I think you should know something." My heart raced. "I am listening." "Karen has been using the HOA office to send emails and make phone calls to other HOAs. I have seen her doing it. She has been telling them that you are a bad property manager and that they should investigate you for violations. She even has a whole list of property management companies she does not like. I think she is trying to get them all banned from the communities. Emily, would you be willing to testify to that?" There was a long pause. "I do not know. I could lose my job." "I understand. But what she is doing is illegal, and she is hurting people's livelihoods. If you have any documentation, any emails or records, that would be incredibly helpful." "Let me think about it." She hung up, and I immediately called David to tell him about the conversation. "If she comes forward, we have her," David said. "But we cannot pressure her. It has to be her choice." 3 days later, Emily called again. "I am willing to help. I made copies of some emails and phone logs. Karen is going to kill me if she finds out, but this is not right." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Central Phoenix. Emily showed up looking nervous, carrying a folder. Inside were printouts of emails Karen had sent to HOA board members in at least 6 different communities, all containing false or misleading information about my company and other property management firms. There were also phone logs showing calls to those same HOAs. "This is perfect," I said, carefully looking through each page. "Emily, you are doing the right thing." "I just hope I do not regret it," she said quietly. Armed with this new evidence, David went back to court and filed amended complaints. He also contacted Detective Rodriguez at the Phoenix Police Department with the new information. The detective called me the next day. "Mr. Ventura, based on the evidence you have provided, we are opening a criminal investigation into Karen Whitmore for fraud, harassment, and conspiracy. This might also involve mail fraud charges at the federal level. I need you to come in and give a formal statement." I spent 4 hours at the police station going through everything in detail. Detective Rodriguez recorded my statement and assured me they would be thorough in their investigation. "HOA disputes can get ugly," she said, "but this goes way beyond a normal dispute. If your evidence holds up, Miss Whitmore could be facing serious charges." About a week later, things came to a head. I received a call from David that the Saguaro Ridge HOA had requested an emergency settlement conference. "They know the criminal investigation is happening," he explained. "They are scared. Karen's attorney probably told her she is in serious trouble. What do they want to make this go away? They will drop all fines and violations, pay your legal fees, and issue a public apology. In exchange, you agree not to pursue further civil action against the HOA itself. What about Karen personally? That is separate. The criminal case proceeds regardless, and you can still sue her individually if you want." I thought about it. The HOA was largely made up of innocent homeowners who had no idea what their president was doing. Going after the HOA itself would only hurt them, but Karen needed to face consequences. "I will accept the settlement with the HOA," I said, "but I want to pursue charges against Karen, and I want her removed as president immediately. I will make that a condition of the settlement." The settlement conference happened 2 days later at David's office. Karen showed up with her attorney, a nervous-looking man named Gregory Phillips. The HOA board vice president, a man named Thomas Reed, was also there. Karen looked furious but also scared. She avoided making eye contact with me as we all sat down around the conference table. David laid out the terms. The HOA will withdraw all fines and violations against properties managed by Ventura Property Management. The HOA will pay Mr. Ventura's legal fees, which currently total $18,000. The HOA will issue a written apology and correction to all homeowners in the community. And finally, Karen Whitmore will immediately resign as HOA president and will be permanently banned from serving on the board in any capacity. Gregory Phillips spoke up. My client is willing to resign, but she disputes any allegations of wrongdoing. This is simply to resolve the matter quickly. Your client can dispute whatever she wants, David said coldly, but the criminal investigation is moving forward. The Phoenix Police Department and potentially the FBI are looking into mail fraud, which is a federal felony. The evidence is overwhelming. Karen finally spoke, her voice tight with anger. This is ridiculous. I was trying to maintain community standards. Property managers like him are destroying our neighborhoods. By fabricating violations and intercepting mail, I said, unable to keep quiet any longer. By lying to other HOAs and trying to destroy my business. That is not maintaining standards. That is harassment and fraud. You people come in with your rental properties and your tenants who do not care about the community, Karen snapped. Someone has to stand up for homeowners. Thomas Reid, the vice president, cleared his throat. Karen, please, this is not helping. The settlement was finalized that afternoon. Karen resigned, though she refused to sign any admission of wrongdoing. The HOA agreed to all terms and issued a formal apology letter the next day, but the criminal case was just beginning. Over the next 6 weeks, Detective Rodriguez and her team built their case. They interviewed Emily, subpoenaed records from multiple HOAs, and traced the mail fraud scheme back to Karen. It turned out that Karen had not only changed my address in various HOA systems, but she had also done the same thing to 2 other property management companies, causing similar problems for them. In late April, Karen Whitmore was arrested at her home and charged with multiple counts of fraud, mail fraud, criminal harassment, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The arrest made local news, with several Phoenix TV stations running stories about the HOA president who had waged a campaign against property managers. I was contacted by a reporter from the Arizona Republic who wanted to interview me. I agreed, figuring it might help warn other property managers about these tactics. The article ran on the front page of the local section with the headline, HOA President Arrested for Orchestrating Fraud Scheme Against Property Managers. The story detailed everything: the fake addresses, the fabricated violations, the attempted destruction of multiple businesses. The public response was swift and largely supportive of the property managers who had been targeted. Several homeowners in Saguaro Ridge reached out to me directly to apologize, saying they had no idea what Karen had been doing. The criminal case moved through the court system over the summer. Karen's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor's office was not interested in being lenient. The evidence was too strong, and the harm Karen had caused was too significant. In August, the case went to trial. I was called as a witness and spent a full day on the stand explaining everything that had happened. Emily also testified, courageously describing what she had witnessed in the HOA office. Several other property managers testified about similar harassment they had experienced. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. In September, Karen Whitmore was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for the mail fraud charges, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution to all the property managers and homeowners who had been affected, a total of over $100,000. Additionally, she received concurrent sentences on the state fraud charges. As I sat in the courtroom and watched the judge hand down the sentence, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief, certainly, vindication, but also a strange sadness. Karen had destroyed her own life because of an irrational vendetta. She could have channeled her energy into something positive, but instead she chose harassment and fraud. After the sentencing, I stood on the courthouse steps with David Kellerman. "It is finally over," I said. "Almost," David replied. "We still have the civil suit against Desert Springs HOA, remember?" I had almost forgotten about that. Desert Springs had been the one HOA that refused to settle. What is the status on that? They are requesting a settlement conference now that the criminal trial is over. I think they realize they do not have a leg to stand on. I am expecting them to fold completely. He was right. 2 weeks later, Desert Springs HOA settled for $25,000, covering my legal fees and damages for the harassment my client had endured. By October, nearly 9 months after I first discovered the fraud scheme, everything was finally resolved. My business had survived, though it had been a brutal experience. I had lost a few clients during the chaos, people who did not want to deal with HOA drama, but I had also gained new clients who specifically sought me out because of the news coverage. They appreciated that I had fought back against an unjust system. I also made some changes to my business practices. I implemented a new system for tracking all HOA communications, with redundant backups and regular audits. I joined a property management association that provided legal resources and support. And I became an advocate for HOA reform in Arizona, working with state legislators on bills to increase transparency and accountability. One afternoon in late October, I was in my office catching up on paperwork when Marcus knocked on my door. "You have a visitor," he said with a smile. Emily, the former HOA receptionist, walked in looking much more confident than the last time I had seen her. "Hi, Mr. Ventura. I hope I am not interrupting." "Not at all. Come in. How are you doing?" "Better. I got a new job working for a property management company, actually. A bigger one than yours, no offense. I realized during all of this that I liked the real estate industry, just not working for Karen." I laughed. "None taken. I am glad you found something better." "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for being understanding when I came forward." I was terrified, but testifying was the right thing to do, and the prosecutor's office was really supportive. "You were incredibly brave. Without your testimony, Karen might have gotten away with it." We talked for a few more minutes before Emily left. After she was gone, I sat at my desk and reflected on everything that had happened. It had been one of the most stressful periods of my life, but it had also been a reminder that standing up for what is right matters, even when it is difficult. I pulled out my phone and called Robert Chen. "Hey Robert, just checking in. How is everything going with the property?" "Great, actually. The new HOA board is much more reasonable. They even apologized again last week, and my tenants just renewed their lease for another year." "That is fantastic. Zachary, I just want to say thanks again for handling all of this. A lot of property managers would have just walked away and left me to deal with it alone. That is not how I do business. You trusted me to manage your property, and that means dealing with problems when they come up." After we hung up, I looked around my office. It was not fancy. Just a simple space with desks and filing cabinets and a coffee maker that was always on. But it was mine, and I had built it through hard work and integrity. The HOA nightmare was over, but I knew there would be other challenges ahead. That is just part of running a business. The important thing was that I had proven to myself and to my clients that I would fight for them when it mattered. I opened my laptop and started working through my to-do list for the week. Property inspections, tenant screenings, maintenance requests. The normal, everyday work of property management. And honestly, after everything I had been through, normal felt pretty good. As the afternoon sun streamed through my office window, I thought about how close I had come to losing everything because of one person's obsession with control and power. Karen Whitmore had believed she was protecting her community, but in reality, she was just feeding her own need to dominate others. The HOA was supposed to be about maintaining common standards and helping neighbors, not about one person imposing their will through intimidation and fraud. The whole experience had taught me some important lessons. First, documentation is everything. If I had not kept meticulous records of property conditions, photographs, and communications, it would have been much harder to prove the violations were fabricated. Second, do not ignore red flags. When something feels wrong, it probably is, and it is worth investigating. Third, legal help is invaluable. David Kellerman had been worth every penny I paid him. Fourth, there are good people everywhere. Emily had risked her job to do the right thing. The homeowners in Saguaro Ridge had been supportive once they understood what was happening. Even Detective Rodriguez had taken the case seriously, when other law enforcement officers might have dismissed it as a civil matter. But perhaps most importantly, I learned that bullies only win if you let them. Karen had counted on property managers being too busy or too intimidated to fight back. She had gotten away with her schemes for months because nobody challenged her. When I finally stood up to her, backed by evidence and legal support, her whole operation collapsed. Marcus stuck his head in my office. "Hey, you have a new client inquiry. Family moving to Phoenix from California, looking for help finding and managing a rental property. Send them my information. I will give them a call tomorrow." Already did. They specifically asked for you because they read about the case. They said they want a property manager who will actually stand up to HOAs. I had to smile at that. Set up a meeting for next week. As Marcus left, my phone buzzed with a text from David Kellerman. Heard from the court. Karen's appeal was denied. Sentence stands. It's officially over. I texted back a thank you and leaned back in my chair. It really was over. Karen Whitmore would spend the next year and a half in federal prison, followed by probation. Her reputation was destroyed. She would never serve on an HOA board again. The other property managers she had targeted had been made whole. The homeowners in the affected communities had new leadership that actually cared about fairness. Justice had been served, and my business was stronger than ever. I packed up my laptop and headed out. It was Friday evening, and I had plans to meet some friends for dinner. For the first time in months, I felt like I could actually relax and enjoy myself without constantly worrying about what new crisis might emerge. As I drove through Phoenix, watching the sun set behind the mountains, I thought about the journey I had been on. It had started with a confused phone call from a client and spiraled into a months-long legal battle that involved fraud investigations, criminal trials, and personal threats. But I had come out the other side intact, with my integrity and my business secure. That night at dinner, my friends asked about the case. They had followed it in the news and were amazed by how it had all unfolded. "Were you ever scared?" my friend Michael asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "There were days when I thought I might lose everything." When you run a small business, something like this can destroy you financially and professionally. But I could not let her win. It was not just about me. It was about every property manager she was targeting, every homeowner being charged fake fines, every tenant living in fear of being evicted over fabricated violations. "Whatever happened to the other HOAs that were involved?" another friend asked. "Most of them were victims too, in a way. Karen had manipulated them by feeding them false information. Once they realized what was really happening, they were cooperative. Only Desert Springs fought us, and they eventually settled. The whole thing exposed how easily HOA systems can be abused by someone in a position of power." The conversation moved on to other topics, but I kept thinking about the question: what had happened to the other people and organizations involved? I had been so focused on the criminal case and protecting my business that I had not really followed up on the broader aftermath. Over the next few weeks, I did some checking. The Saguaro Ridge HOA had elected a new president, a retired engineer named Paul Martinez, who was very focused on transparency and fair enforcement of rules. He had actually reached out to me and several other property managers in the community to establish better communication channels. Under his leadership, the HOA had revised their policies to require multiple board members to approve any fine over $500, and to mandate that all property managers receive copies of violations through at least 2 different methods. Desert Springs Community Association had gone through a similar transformation. After the lawsuit settlement, several board members had resigned, embarrassed by their role in the harassment. New leadership had come in with a focus on actually serving homeowners rather than punishing them. Oak Creek Village and Sunset Hills, the 2 HOAs that had quickly settled with me, had both implemented new protocols for verifying contact information and investigating complaints before issuing fines. Even the property management company that ran the strip mall on West Cactus Road had made changes. They now had a strict policy about monitoring mail for vacant suites and immediately notifying businesses if their name appeared on mail sent to their property. In November, I was invited to speak at a property management conference in Tucson. The organizers wanted me to share my experience and talk about best practices for dealing with difficult HOAs. I was nervous about public speaking, but I felt it was important to help other property managers avoid what I had gone through. The presentation went well. About 200 property managers attended, and many of them came up afterward to share their own horror stories about HOA harassment. Some of the stories were almost as bad as mine. It became clear that Karen Whitmore was not an isolated case. There were HOA board members across the state, and probably across the country, who abused their power and made life miserable for property managers and homeowners. This led me to get involved with a coalition working on HOA reform legislation in Arizona. The proposed bill would require HOA board members to complete training on fair housing laws and proper governance, would mandate greater financial transparency, and would create a state ombudsman office to handle complaints about HOA misconduct. The legislative work was slow and sometimes frustrating, but it felt meaningful. I had turned my personal nightmare into an opportunity to create positive change. In December, almost exactly a year after I first discovered the harassment scheme, I received a letter in the mail. It was from the Arizona Department of Real Estate, informing me that my property management license had been renewed, and that I had been recognized for exemplary professional conduct in the face of adversity. They noted that my case had helped expose systemic problems with HOA oversight and had led to important reforms. I framed the letter and hung it in my office, right next to my original business license from 7 years ago. Christmas came and went. Business was good. I had hired 2 new employees to help handle the increased client load. Ventura Property Management was not just surviving but thriving. In January, I got an unexpected phone call from a woman named Patricia Dunham. "Mr. Ventura, my name is Patricia. I am the new president of the Homeowners Association Management Council here in Phoenix. We are an organization that represents HOA management companies and board members. I wanted to reach out because we are developing new best practices guidelines, and we would like your input." I was surprised but pleased. I would be happy to help. We are specifically looking at communication protocols and conflict resolution. Your case really opened our eyes to how things can go wrong when there are not proper checks and balances in place. Over the next few months, I worked with Patricia's organization to develop comprehensive guidelines for how HOAs should communicate with property managers, verify information, and handle disputes. The guidelines were adopted by dozens of HOAs across the Phoenix metro area and eventually became a model for other parts of Arizona. By spring, I felt like I had finally closed the chapter on the whole ordeal. My business was stable and growing. The legislative reforms were moving forward. Karen Whitmore was serving her sentence. The HOAs that had been involved had all reformed their practices. One warm April afternoon, I was doing a routine inspection of Robert Chen's property in Saguaro Ridge. The house looked beautiful. The tenants had stayed and were taking excellent care of it. The landscaping was perfect. Everything was exactly as it should be. As I was walking back to my car, a woman approached me from across the street. "Excuse me, are you Zachary Ventura?" "Yes, I am," she smiled warmly. "I am Jennifer Morris. I live right over there. I just wanted to introduce myself and say thank you for what you did. Karen made all our lives miserable with her constant complaints and fines. Since she has been gone, this neighborhood has been so much more peaceful. The new board actually listens to us." "I am glad things are better," I said sincerely. "My husband and I are actually thinking about buying a rental property as an investment. Would you be willing to manage it for us?" I handed her my business card. "I would be happy to discuss it. Give me a call anytime." As I drove away from Saguaro Ridge that afternoon, I reflected on how much had changed in just over a year. I had gone from being harassed and nearly driven out of business to being thanked by homeowners and sought out for new clients. The experience had been brutal, but it had also made me a better business owner and a stronger person. I thought about Karen sometimes, wondering what she was thinking as she sat in a federal prison. Did she have any regrets? Did she understand the harm she had caused? Or did she still believe she had been right, that she had been protecting her community? I would probably never know the answer to those questions, and that was okay. Some people never learn, never grow, never admit their mistakes. That was not my problem to solve. My job was to continue doing what I did best: managing properties with integrity, treating people fairly, and standing up for what was right when it mattered. As I pulled into my office parking lot, I saw Marcus waiting by the door with a tablet in his hand. "We just got 3 new property listings," he said excitedly, "all from referrals." "That is great. Let us take a look." We walked into the office together, ready to tackle whatever came next. The HOA nightmare was behind me, but the work of building a good business continued every day. And honestly, I would not have it any other way.